Hello and welcome to a new episode of the B2B Academy Podcast. I'm excited about the opportunity to host today one of my friends and a long and dear partner at NNC, Greg Corson, the CEO of Relational IT. At NNC Services, we provide valuable learning and growth experiences to business leaders through the B2B Academy project. This is our contribution to the business ecosystem, and we'd like to feature top business leaders sharing experiences and real knowledge so that you can get the coaching, the tools, and whatever you can use to grow and develop your business. The topic of today's conversation with Greg is entering US market as a B2B tech service or product provider. And I'm excited to see what amazing advice Greg has to offer. So Greg, a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Loredana.
Please introduce yourself. I know you have an amazingly rich background, and it would be great to hear, what you've done. I know you're cooking quite a few things at the moment, so maybe you can share a bit more about yourself.
I have been practicing baking bread, but I know that's not what you want to speak about. But I'm getting better at that. Although my family seems to think otherwise. I got into the IT staffing and recruiting business before the year 2000. And so experienced the Y2K phenomenon and many others since. The recruiting business has changed dramatically over those years, but at the end of the day, it's very much the same. We're trying to align the right people with the company's requirements and do that in a way that is proactive for people's careers, that blend well with the client's team and their culture. And of course, today with people being remote, that makes not more challenging necessarily, but it's definitely another piece of the puzzle. So at the end of the day, we've been in the IT business focused on recruiting and staffing and project work of a whole lot of different types.
Nice. Now, I know that you've actually helped quite a few companies expand their business to the US, and we've also partnered quite a bit at NNC and to bring valuable solutions to customers. So can you tell us perhaps a bit more about your background? But I'd be curious, this mixed background between an amazing staffing and recruiting experience to, managing companies, to consulting on entering the market and business growth, and even into things like marketing and sales, which I know that you're an expert in. What were some of the defining moments, let's say, in your professional experience? But also, have you had any, formal coaching, training, or was it all self-taught?
That's a lot of things to ask. The HR technology space is really intriguing to me. The core operating systems that our clients use are really kind of ancient, and for the most part, not very they're very corporate centric. There's very little focus on the person themselves. Today with, this great resignation and people moving to remote work very quickly through COVID and, these things, it's more about the people versus the company. So I find great interest in watching HR tech and how it's evolving. There are some terrific ideas coming from Europe and around the world that want to do business in the United States. I try to track them. I try to keep an eye on them. There's a big conference beginning today, I believe, in Las Vegas, the HR Tech group will be announcing many more ideas. And like so many areas of technology, it's just almost beyond belief that there could be more different ideas. But of the thousands of them that exist, there's still new ones and different ones. And I think what works in Europe sometimes is assumed it will work here in the United States. And perhaps that's true in some cases, but in others I've seen product that I'm just not sure it fits the work environment here, or it fits how buying is done, most importantly. So it's always evolving. I think the same with marketing technology. And I actually believe recruiting is essentially a marketing exercise. We're only trying to find the people that we're looking for and find where they communicate, what platform, and that changes very, very rapidly. At one time, of course, it was all email, and then text was the big thing. And now it's like, where do these people live? Where do they spend their time? And that's where we have to go find them. No different than a marketing exercise.
So I love it, Greg, how it's never about you, but it's always about others. This is one thing that I've noticed, like really early on when we entered the US market and when I met you, you were very focused, to make, the others get a lot of value and to make the others feel good and have an amazing experience. And you've turned the tables a bit, but I'm gonna, let the conversation flow, because I would have loved to understand, how successful you were professionally and what have been some milestones. So perhaps you can come back to this point later on if you feel comfortable.
Okay.
But now, because you started talking about getting into the US market, how have you seen this? Because I think you've seen this trend for quite a while. New businesses enter the US market, usually, services or products, as you mentioned, some are a good fit, some are not such a great fit, How is this, from your perspective? You're a native, you're a business professional, you're an entrepreneur yourself. What's the feel there, in your shoes?
Well, yes, I am approached reasonably often, maybe once a month, by a firm from, wherever, it doesn't matter to me, with a reasonably good idea. And some have a foothold in the United States and want to expand it. Some are brand new to the idea. And so it's interesting, right? I mean, I think it's expected that I would be interested in working on a, maybe a success-based model, commission only. And I'm offered very attractive commissions. But the work effort, the model, the machine that would need to be built to go and be successful, especially in a basically an underfunded marketing effort is really not appropriate. And yeah, I suppose if somebody had the right or immediate relationships within their community or their network that they could turn upon and close a couple of quick deals, they'd look like a hero. And probably I could do that. But what happens after those few quick deals? And how do you really begin gaining traction and market share in a very, very crowded space, particularly in the HR tech space? So yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to basics. It goes back to planning. It goes back to strategy and who really is your market, who is your customer, who's that buyer, what are those personas, how do you come to understand them, how do you learn how they make decisions, where they make those decisions, and why, right? What is the pain that they have that needs to be solved for? So I don't think the effort's any different. The textbook is the same. The B2B marketing effort and all the other great coursework that NNC provides has taught me tons on these subjects, and I don't think it's to be underestimated, the challenge and the patience that's required, the investment that's needed. But at the end of the day, it's where do these people live on the internet? How do you go to find them? How do you get their attention and time, and begin to talk about what you do to help them?
Amazing. So I felt there was a lot of valuable points there. First of all, when someone is entering a new market, and I'm not just saying about US, I recently came back from a coaching session in London with one of our customers in industrial automation, and they mentioned the same, like companies entering the market are trying to get those quick wins. And those quick wins, they hope to be achieved with just one person that can, do wonders and introduce them to everybody and so on. And I was actually talking with a really dear customer of ours. We've been working for quite a while. They're established in London as well, but they're in IT outsourcing. And what he was sharing was that he had to invest his personal life there, like 5 years of staying there, networking there. The environment is much more conservative. And that's because they've seen so many companies entering the market and then exiting really quick and so on. So the first test, if you want to get business, for example, in the UK, is to be there for quite a while, and then you will get some business. Now in the US, also because of the pandemic, but also before, we were doing quite a bit of business, even remotely. Like we had to travel there, key personnel had to travel there to meet customers, to network and so on. But still, the in-person feeling, being there, having a local footprint, that was paramount. And of course, you cannot expect a person to do wonders, right? No matter what network of contacts they have. Even that person needs to build trust that you have the delivery capabilities, right? That you can deliver upon, it's their word, it's their own person guaranteeing for that company that's entering the market, right? So I totally can see how, as you mentioned, you can go around, you can try doing wonders and so on, but at the end of the day, this is just a person, it's not a company. If you want to expand your company, you have to have a serious effort, you have to plan for a longer time, not just for a few months to test out how things are going and so on. Also, you mentioned about commissions. As an agency, you can imagine we also get plenty of times this proposal. Now, at the beginning, I was sort of curious about it because on the one hand, I tend to believe that it's good to be value-based, right? But then it was like technicalities of measuring what success and so on, that it just became impractical to have a contract based on percentages. However, later on, what I've noticed when we tried to actually implement that, we said, okay, let's give it a shot, was that the ones that were working on commission and wanted a commission-based deal were not very engaged. Like they expected to get, huge deals or huge benefits of a collaboration and so on, but they wouldn't put the effort. And right now, what I'm seeing is that at least at the basic level, they need to support the effort of entering the market with base pay. And then, of course, performance needs to be paid on commission and shared success and so on, if both parties agree. But I find it like a maturity of the ones entering the market, right? So I can totally understand, entering the market in the US, you being perceived as a really good agent based on your amazing network of contacts and how, your business status and position and so on. So I can totally see how you are approached by this. And I can also understand why it may sometimes work, but sometimes, the terms of the deal don't sound that attractive. So what other challenges have you seen with companies in B2B trying to enter the market, like maybe cultural wise, or anything else that you've noticed that more oftentimes happens?
Well, we've talked about this so many times because we've discussed whether to do some of these deals, and I've come to you with all these let's just call them pie in the sky win ideas, where I say, hey, listen, if we could put together the right marketing model and build a machine that's repeatable for others, why couldn't we take these deals and automate as much as possible and win healthy commissions year over year as part of our business model? And each time, I think almost exclusively, you've talked me off the edge, telling me it's crazy. So what really that means is what we've asked companies to do, in addition to their expectation that you're going to go sell and earn these commissions, is in order to do that and do that effectively, we've got to build a really robust marketing strategy, and we've got to put account-based marketing types of modeling in place, and we've got to use our time really, really wisely. A lot of cultures are from a smile and dial type of mentality, and if 10 people are making 100 calls a day, then in a matter of months, there should be enough leads to create enough demos, to create enough interest, to create a handful of deals. Well, maybe, right? It's quite remarkable how mail, postcards in the mail are coming back and creating great results, right? It's so who knows, right? I'm not suggesting that the business development rep smiling and dialing isn't effective, but I think it has to be strategic, and I think it has to be really, really well thought through. And I think that's, I guess, the part about these deals that I find less attractive. If somebody comes in and says, listen, what do you need to build a machine around you? What is the framework? What does the foundation need to look like for you to be successful? Then we can say, sure, it's going to take, this many $1,000s and a couple of months to get it built and started. And then we got to keep feeding that marketing machine in order to automate as much as possible. And at the end of the day, you're going to get deals for less cost because you haven't taken the risk on one expensive salesperson in the hope that their network is going to create business, or a room full of people, just calling and calling. And the risk that they're not trained well, or having the right message, or leaving, appropriate information on their voicemails and such. So I think that's probably the challenge, right? I think it's just, again, it's part of that investment that I think is critical to a successful sales organization, regardless of who and where they are. But I think it's even more critical when you're coming into a market with a new product, into a busy, every area is busy. It doesn't really matter what the product is or what the solution is. And you just have to appreciate that it's going to take some time.
Perhaps can you elaborate maybe on, you mentioned, this idea that maybe quantity can work, when reaching out to a new market, like if you have enough people calling and so on. But in the end, isn't there, like, even in the logic of how you build or adopt the product or the service to the new market, the quality of that feedback is very important. So because you mentioned ABM, I just wanted to bring up this point that yes, you can invest in quantity and get enough of a funnel so that something churns. From our ABM, or I'd like to call it like the value sales driven model, I find that not very rewarding, both for the company, because it's a big effort, not very well spent, because those customers in the end may not be the greatest fit, just because they were a percentage of many that were not a great fit. And comparing that to a relationship that you build maybe in different stages, throughout different life cycles, where you spend the time to understand who is this customer on this new market? What do they want from my product and service? How are they reacting even after post sales, right? Is this a good fit? Is there something that they're happy with, so that then you can replicate a successful model and actually add that machine in the back that, expands this into volumes, right? So I think that maybe the key to a new market is not necessarily going volumes, but understanding first the good fit and then expanding into volumes, right?
Oh, for sure. And then, the other piece is in the SaaS model, it takes a lot to be sticky. So as a newcomer to a market, you're desperate to get a logo. And so you say, well, let's just try it, right? And so buyer says, all right, I'll try it. And it's for the most minimum deal, the smallest amount of money. And to your point, if you don't really have buy-in to really try it and to really help you perfect your product and to expand within that client, you kind of have a weak logo. And too many of those just is really distracting. And so, it isn't about volume. I think it's about quality, as you point out. And those first deals really, really are important to that, because if you're, celebrating a win of, 2 seats in a big organization that are getting no attention, essentially it's not going to get renewed, and you haven't learned anything. You haven't been able to perfect your product by the relationship. So maybe, of course, it depends on the solution and all that, but it would probably be beneficial to have, right? 6, 10, 12 really interested customers who are investing their time and energy in your product, and so that you can learn really what its value is, and then be able to market accordingly with those lessons learned. Rather than just go get 2 seats in 10 places and not really have any impact.
For sure. What other challenges have you noticed? I understand that time is a challenge, right? Because everybody wants to see quick results. But in fact, it's like in a relationship. Would you marry in a couple of months, right? Maybe you would, but maybe you're lucky and that relationship goes long term. But I think that it's still better to take a bit more time to build such relationships that are important to maybe the history or the background of the company onto a new market and so on. So time definitely sounded like a really important challenge. Then the going either volumes or going really focused on your new market approach and figuring out, who's your buyer, what do they need, and specifically what challenges they have and how you can make it a good fit for them. What else have you noticed as a, maybe not even a common challenge, but just based on of your own experiences? For example, I have to admit that when entering a new market, it's been proven a much more successful model for us to have a local, representative, to have people that are already involved in the business culture there. It worked best when we can also co-locate someone to support the local personnel or staff or partners with, the company overall mentality and culture and systems and so on. But the ideal case scenario is to have someone like a real footprint there. What other challenges have you noticed?
Well, I think there's so many, but I guess the answer is, so if somebody's local, right, who do you choose to be that person? How well are they connected? Can they leverage their university community? Can they, have they been involved in certain organizations that at a high level and a leadership level that would give somebody some credentials to be able to make some impact on the sales front? Your EO network, is a terrific example of how it crosses borders and enables you to build relationships in countries anywhere because of that network. I think one of the takeaways from last week's HubSpot's inbound conference was the changing buyer dynamic. And as the younger people, the Gen Zs, mature in their careers and become buyers, they have an entirely different persona that is going to change the way marketing is done. It has to. But that's not unique or new, right? Marketing is never sat still. It's always evolved. You have to always continually, test different things. And, don't underestimate TikTok. People are doing millions and millions of dollars there because that's where their buyer persona lives. And so, I think it's just finding those trusted sort of, I don't know if it's communities or networks, or I think the challenges are infinite and they never stop. And I think you have to be able to be flexible and experimental and do really good measurements on what's working and what isn't, but not suggest that just because TikTok didn't work today that it's not going to work tomorrow, or that, don't underestimate Reddit or, any one of the other, infinite programs or platforms rather that you can, but at the same time, you can't do all of them. So you have to go try to be expert at a few and then move it around. So I don't know if there's a real perfect answer to that question, Loredana. I think every day if I'm doing recruiting and I come up with some other, creative way to write someone and I get a reply, it's like, oh my gosh, I figured it out. I'm going to go try that 100 more times now in a campaign, and it flops right on, so I don't know if there's a perfect answer to that. I think it takes good thinking, it takes strategy, it takes patience, it takes investment, and it really, and it takes a lot of creativity.
Yeah, I think that your professional background there speaks tons, because I also kind of feel that it doesn't work that well to try the same tactic with everyone, no matter how great it is. But it's always back to that person-to-person relationship. And as you mentioned, and I love that you shared recently this amazing takeaway that it's always about community and so on. I am part of a few business communities. EO is, I think, one of the best ones, and I highly recommend anyone that needs a community and their entrepreneurship and so on, they join EO. But I feel that it gives us a common ground to talk, but also commitment in EO is not to sell each other, or at least without being asked for, or non-solicitation, and everybody is respectful of that, right? So inevitably we do a lot of business in EO, but we do it in a different way. Like, for example, let's say someone is trying to grow their IT business, or they're trying to get to the US, let's say, right? So I say, hey, I have a really amazing friend there, Greg. He can help you figure out, your first staff, the strategy to go to market and so on. This, of course, will probably end up in you partnering with that person. This, of course, may end up in some marketing collaboration for entering the new market or something. But it doesn't mean that I offered, this is how much it costs or something. So it's a maybe salesy way. But I think that we're seeing, even talking about social platforms, we're seeing less and less engagement, even with LinkedIn. Like we're seeing people not using LinkedIn anymore because they get 20 messages a day, and if they have important work to do, they won't have time to reply to 20 strangers each day.
Well, not only is it's strangers, but it's just not. It's less valuable, right? It's the old adage, right? You got to give I don't know how many times today, right? 5, 7, 9 times you've got to give something of value before asking for something in exchange. And what's happened on LinkedIn is just like this barrage of garbage, and it's kind of disappointing, right? Because it was such a valuable platform for so long. And so what do people do? They split and they go build their own community on Reddit or someplace, and closely monitor it and be sure that the traffic is valuable to those who are a part of that community. And they police it. And as soon as somebody decides to go like outwardly sell something that really isn't of interest to the community, they're not afraid to exclude that person. And so if you can get your entry of a product introduced through a network like that of like-minded people who are interested in what you're doing, and go about it like you would at a cocktail party instead of at a sales event, I think you can do very, very well. But it does take some patience. I think I've said that a few times. And but you're right, LinkedIn's gotten really, really noisy, and it's unfortunate, really, because it is such a great platform and there's so many people there. And but not everybody responds any longer there, where it used to be pretty attractive.
I just covered this in a recent Forbes article, that because of this noise, we're going to see more and more communities starting to polarize, basically. And it's going to be this sort of a communities that are, sharing experiences, that are learning together, that are facing challenges together. And it's going to be really tough to get there. Like, how can you target a WhatsApp group that talks about, I don't know, health tech? Right. You have no idea who's in that group, right? Or how can you target a Slack community that's discussing I don't know, the next HubSpot add-on, right? You cannot, like, the time for general, let's say, and content overload is here, and generalized content, and now people are starting to devise into communities that are really well protected, as you mentioned, that where you have to come up with valuable things to share, teach. For example, this is one of the reasons we launched the B2B Academy from NNC, because we consider that it's very important that our business community gets educated. Okay, that they have the tools, they have the means to solve their marketing challenges, their growth challenges. Inevitably, if they associate us with a professional, with someone that has a say in this space, with someone that knows what they're talking about and so on, they will give us work when it's overloading for them. But at that stage, even for us, it's better because they're educated, they're already a customer that knows the specific language, knows what to ask for, knows what metrics to look at, and so on, which is so much better than just talking about how to set up the LinkedIn profile or how to set up the basic tools. So I can totally relate to the community aspect, and it is part of where everything is going. Companies have already started for a while to power communities, but I think that people are just now waking up to the reality that they don't need to be exposed to the LinkedIn noise.
Right.
They can join the, leadership community in their space that just talks about recruitment challenges, right? And they're not bombarded of what messages, or they just talk about marketing automation, and they're not bombarded about agencies trying to get work or something. So I can totally understand how that's going. Now, mind you, I would like to do a ton of episodes with you just to understand how you do networking, because I think you're amazing at it. I have not heard you Greg, in the whole history. We've been like we know each other for quite a while. I haven't heard you not being able to befriend someone like really well. It's like I've never heard you say, I met this guy and we couldn't talk about anything, or I met this person and we weren't able to hit it off. But it's always an amazing story with you. I met this guy and then we went skydiving, and I met this guy and then we went to all the bars and so on. So that must be some unbelievable networking talent.
It could be to my detriment in a lot of ways. But I don't even know what to say, but look at, you send me, at Inbound last week in Boston, you suggest, hey, go visit the EO group, right? And it was the first thing I call you and say, I met my new best friend from London. Now it just happens to be that he's a very successful business person, and he's got just services that we could actually use for our customers. And there were a lot of similarities. So, maybe I picked my friends carefully, but it just so happened out of luck, I come in and there's this person standing there by themselves. So of course you say hello to that person. And it turns out that, we went to a bunch of parties that evening together, and then connected again the next day. And he's fantastic, and I can't wait to kind of talk shop with him, because I think he has a lot that he can teach, and he's one of those persons who is very open about his business and interested about my business, and while we didn't really talk about how we could do business together necessarily, you could kind of tell there was a bond that suggested that we would help each other, right? And so. But can you monetize that? And the scope of helping someone come to the United States with their business, or someone in the United States coming to Europe that you would help, where does that get that effort? Well, maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. But you got to catalog all these. And then when someone says, how can you help me with something? Perhaps it's just a referral. It's not, it's not necessarily monetized every single time.
For sure. Don't spill over everything, Greg. Please, hold some advice to our networking episode, dedicated episode. And I'd also really love to have you featured in one conversation about, habits of this new leadership generation that's coming up, the Gen Zs and the millennials starting to occupy quite significant mid-management, but not just mid-management positions, and how different they're behaving, from you and I, right? Not necessarily that I cannot understand that, but for example, how I do my research differently, how I approach decision-making differently, how I approach communication channels differently. So I think that's also an amazing topic for one of our future conversations.
You better invite someone from that generation in to answer those questions. We can only...
You have some questions as well, huh?
Because... But I tell you, no, there was a lot of discussion about it at Inbound, because the market, the buyers are maturing in their careers and they're coming up and they do business differently. And so let's not pretend that they're going to answer an email. Let's not pretend that they're even going to answer a text. They may not even have a phone. And so like where do they get their information? And there's some really interesting technology that's being developed to try and watch these people's behavior. Anyone. Well, we've always been doing that from a retail perspective, but now it's all right, where are they doing their research about your company? Haven't been to your website, haven't gone to a CTA, they haven't downloaded, they haven't talked to a BDR, but yet on the internet they're asking their friends about your service or product. And that's really interesting, right? Because if you can now see who's doing that and why, now you have to go make a you have to go reach out to them. But so that's changing, and it will continue to evolve forever.
Amazing stuff. Like I just heard, and again, I will try to figure out this research, but it used to be that more than 50% of the buying cycle in B2B was done before someone was contacting a vendor. So for example, if I need a B2B solution, I do my own research and so on. With the new generations occupying management positions is over 70% now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for example, some of these new tools and technologies and so on, we cover them in the ABM workshops and coaching sessions we have under the B2B Academy. But it's amazing to, have this kind of dialogue with you and with people that understand, the importance of staying up to date, right? And it's part of what you do, right? You have to understand people so that you can place them in the right positions. And so I definitely think that you even have better insights in terms of individuals' behavior. Now, to sum up and to conclude our conversation, which was longer than I definitely planned, but I'm really happy of how the conversation went. Let's say I have an amazing business somewhere in Europe, in the Netherlands, in Sweden, in the UK, and I want to enter the US market, right? What are some practical steps? Let's say I've already figured out my finances and I already figured out, all the legal aspects and we're over the back office stuff. Now I'm ready to go to market. What are, some clear steps that you feel that someone should take, like not the whole plan, of course, but like plan for a couple of years, people, not for 2 months, or
right.
Employ a team, not a person, or what's your, let's give people that are listening and maybe watching this, let's give them a thread, right, to pick up on. Where should they start?
Oh my gosh, it's such a huge question. And I think it really depends on the business, and what its, who its target is, what it does. So I don't know, pick one. But I'd always advocate the first thing is to call you and create a strategy, because it's always critical. But all right, so let's just say it's HR tech, and it's a B2B, and it's I don't know, it's a product that's a standalone. I would say the first thing is to go figure out how it can't be a standalone, and which of the marketplaces could it be a component of. So could you go tag along with Workday? Could you be part of Taleo's marketplace? Could you be, what other channel types of opportunities are there? It's really difficult to get into companies and get licensed, to get contracts signed and get through legal and IT and all those things. It takes a long, long time. And so could you position your company and product in a way that those borders are down? So could you tag along with another product that you complement? Could you, again, be part of one of the sort of marketplaces and collaborate that way? All of it requires the same level of selling. Just because you're on a marketplace doesn't mean you're going to be sold. And there's been some really, really great events that I've attended that have kind of tried to teach some of that. So I don't know if that's I don't know if we have time for the big answer, but I just think it comes down to really understanding what the product is, who the buyer is, what it does, who it helps, and positioning it appropriately, and then creating the right expectations based on that positioning.
Amazing. I couldn't you mentioned marketing strategies and positioning and things like that. I couldn't have phrased it better myself. I think the first step is to always understand the market, figure out, what are some of the challenges and opportunities. Is there room? and how you can adapt, what's waiting for you there, what's the persona, and so on. However, to be very practical, I also believe that looking at investing long term into opening up a new market, like not in blind, but for example, taking this more German mentality of looking at the new market for years in advance, not just for months in advance. Going for the run, like looking at it, if it would be a new business, would you abandon it so easily before figuring out the market fit and so on? We know that, new businesses fail quite often. But again, because you have a successful thing back home, probably entering a new market already gives you a bit of an edge. Like you have backing from back home, you already have a successful business model. So now you really have to make it. That being said, I've seen a lot of businesses, some are customers, some we've learned from the market, where opportunity is much higher with the States, but also with other developed markets. Markets right now are moving also to Asia and so on. And we've seen that, and we actually advise most customers to look at least at 3 geographically different markets, maybe even 3 continents if possible, because we've seen so much risk and so much turbulence these days that no matter where you are, it's always better to have 1-2 more footprints, local footprints in other areas, so that you can mitigate the risk, right? For example, with now the war in Ukraine, it was amazing that some of the companies we worked with, it was such a huge gap between a huge marketing agencies in Ukraine that went down for good. The entrepreneur that used to make millions before was looking for a job in the next month, which is tragic for what happened, but he was safe and everything, but he was actually looking for a job into a new market. And another smaller agency that have a footprint in the UK and a footprint in the US and a footprint in another Eastern European country, but they're much smaller. They survived and they are thriving now because they also leveraged a bit of the business community support during these times to even catch a bit more ground. So that kind of told me that it was kind of a wake-up call that don't rest just because you're well on your market. You always have to have a backup. You always have to have a footprint somewhere else. And I think US is still an amazing market, and with the changes that are happening, I think it's going to be still I still believe that that's where people, especially in technology, need to look at for a long time going forward.
Sure. You see the reports, right, with all the spending. So you say, oh, let's follow the money. Well, It's not that easy.
Yeah. Any last thoughts, last minute advice, any things you'd like to share?
Wow. Only that. Thank you for including me. You're an inspiration and just one of the smartest people I know. So keep up the great work. NNC is terrific, and I would always recommend to, as part of that homework, part of the diligence, get involved in the B2B Academy, learn about new strategies and flexible marketing practices, so that as the markets, as your buyers ebb and flow, whether they're getting older or younger, learn how to communicate with them in the most proactive way. Give before you ask.
Thanks so much, Greg. Really appreciate it. This has not been scripted at all, so thanks for the...
And as usual, you and I have spoken for much longer than we planned to.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard to, whenever we meet, it's hard to be succinct about a huge amount of topics that we share. And of course, I can return the compliment. I really love to have you as a guest. These are some of our first episodes, and we have amazing professionals coming up, but I wanted to start strong, and the stronger you start, it's closer to home with valuable people in your network of contacts. So I really appreciate you taking this invitation. Please, for the rest of the audience, let us know, if you would like Greg to share maybe feedback on some of your marketing strategies and so on. We'd be happy to pass that along and figure out, if he could help you. I've seen you've done amazing work, Greg, when, the heavy lifting is done at the market entry. So this podcast is going to be available mainly on our B2B-Academy.com website, but of course on all the other YouTube and Vimeo and other channels. And do let us know if there are other topics you'd like to learn about. Thanks a lot, Greg. Really appreciate it. It was an amazing conversation.